Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 22, Connections and Dependencies of the Book of Formation, Book 4, the Written Word of Kabalism, First Period, from the Doctrine and Literature of the Kabalah, by Arthur Edward Waite. 3. Connections and Dependencies of the Book of Formation. Were there evidence to warrant us in believing that Moses de Leon did actually, as his hostile relative is reported to have affirmed, write the Zohar bodily out of his own head, there would still be substantial evidence that the Kabalistic system which it contains was not his invention. The existence of the Sepher Yetzirah is part of this evidence, which appears, however, more fully and more strongly in the commentaries and developments of that work. We have seen already that when it came to be printed at Mantua, the Book of Formation was accompanied by 5 such connections, which at the same time do not exhaust the list that might be given in a full bibliography. The best known is unquestionably the Sefer Sephiroth, or Commentary on the 10 Sephiroth by way of questions and answers, the work of R. Azariel ben Menahem. That of Rabbi Abraham has been regarded as the most important from an occult standpoint, while the earliest in point of time is the work of Saadia Gaon in the 10th century. Another, which has been attributed to Hagan in the early part of the 11th century, would rank next in antiquity, but it has been usually rejected as spurious. Commentaries are also attributed to R. Moses Botrel, R. Moses ben Naaman, R. Abraham ben David Halevi the Younger, and R. Eliezer. With the exception of the one last mentioned, they are all prior to the period when Moses de Leon is supposed to have been at work on the Zohar, and they have been used to show that the novelty of that work is of form rather than material. The commentary of R. Saadia Gaon was published in Hebrew at Mantua together with the Sepher Yetzirah, but it was written originally in Arabic, and a copy is preserved in the Bodleian Library. After remaining in manuscript for over 800 years, this Arabic original was at length printed at Paris, together with a French translation in 1892. In the introduction prefixed to his version, Monsieur Lambert observes that Saadia Gaon appears as a theosophist in his commentary, which is equivalent to saying that the first expository treatise on the Sepher Yetzirah possesses a Kabalistic complexion, though the author is frequently regarded as a purely rationalistic writer. It must be confessed, however, that Saadia offers little connection with Zoharic doctrine. We have noted that the Sephiroth of the Sepher Yetzirah shows scarcely any trace of an emanational system. For Saadia Gaon, there is one intermediary between God and the world, but this is the physical air and not the transcendental numerations. In this air, God is everywhere present, and it penetrates all bodies, even the most compact. Of the doctrine of Ein Sof, there is also no real trace. It is, however, recognized, on the one hand, that we cannot have an adequate notion of the divinity or his correspondences with the world, but on the other, that some approximate idea may be obtained as to the latter, and that they may be shown forth by means of figures and comparisons. One of these illustrations tells us that God is the life of the world, as the soul is the life of the body. And as in man the soul is all-powerful, so God is omnipotent in the world. He is also its supreme reason, and as in man, the rational faculty is the guide of life, so the divine power is directed by the divine reason. Above this elementary and commonplace form of natural theology, the commentary never soars, and we may be indeed warranted in saying that the work, as a whole, has no inherent interest, though it is valuable as a historical document. Unlike the Sepher Yetzirah, which makes no reference to pneumatology, Saadia Gaon devotes a certain space to the consideration of the soul in man, and here, in a sense, he connects with Zoharic Kabalism, though he rejects metempsychosis, for he recognizes its 5 aspects and calls them by their conventional names, which names, however, occur, as we have seen, in the Talmud. Unfortunately, his classification is exceedingly clumsy, and he begins by following Plato in the recognition of 3 faculties: reason, concupiscence, and anger. On account of reason, the soul is called neshama; on account of concupiscence, it is called nefesh; and on account of anger, it is called ruach. The 2 other names, chaya, living, and jechidali, unique, refer to the vitality of the soul and to the fact that no other creature resembles it. The doctrine concerning divine and angelic names is also the subject of some references which are important to our inquiry because they establish the fact that Sadhya Gaon did not ascribe to them any occult virtue. The names of the angels vary according to the events which they are commissioned to accomplish, and in like manner, those referred to the deity are descriptive of his operations. In the work of the creation, he terms himself Elohim. When ordaining the covenant of circumcision, he is called El Shaddai. He is the I Am in connection with the wonders of the 10 plagues, and he is Jah when producing the great miracle of the Red Sea. As it is with the names of God and the angels, so is it with those of the stars, which vary according to their qualities, namely their greater or lesser brilliance, their hot or cold natures, etc. When explaining the object of the Sepher Yetzirah as representing the manner in which created things come into being, there is a reference to the 10 categories, namely substance, quantity, quality, relation, place, time, powers, position, activity, passivity. And if these are to be regarded as referring to the numerations of the Sepher Yetzirah, it is clear that Sadhya Gaon understood the latter as an Aristotelian philosopher. With these categories, the 10 commandments are also forced to correspond in an arbitrary manner. For example, that against adultery answers to the category of position, for the act itself is a position and a contact. Lastly, in his analysis of the Hebrew alphabet, the commentator seeks to account for its sequence. Aleph is the first sound pronounced, that is, it is vocalized at the back of the tongue. Shin is vocalized in the middle of the mouth, and Mem on the lips. Unfortunately for the analogy, Mem precedes Shin in the alphabet, and indeed the design of the speculation seems past conjecture. About the commentary ascribed to Hagan, there is considerable confusion, which Isaac Meyer increases by representing that it deals with the Book of Concealment instead of that of Formation. There are no historic notices and no traces whatsoever of the former tract before the appearance of the Zohar, in which it was first made known. The work of Gaon needs only to be mentioned in passing on account of its disputed authenticity. Other works attributed to him are not above suspicion, but it may be admitted in a general way that he had more distinct Kabbalistic connections than Sadhya. The condemned commentary deals largely with the mysteries of the Tetragrammaton and gives, perhaps for the first time, the curious quadrilateral method of writing it by means of letters and circles, to which so much importance was afterwards attributed by occult writers. The commentary of Abraham ben David Halevi, the younger of that name and a contemporary of Maimonides, whom he attacked bitterly, is also included in the Mantua edition of the Book of Formation and was used largely by Ritengelius in that of Amsterdam, 1642. The intensest confusion prevails with regard to the personality of the author, who on the one hand is frequently identified with the writer of the Seder ha-Kabalah, and is on the other the subject of many contradictory myths prevailing in occult circles. Eliphas Levi, who cites a passage from his treatise as a proof of the authenticity and reality of his own discovery of the magnum opus, makes a great deal of mystery concerning it and its rarity, but he has used evidently the edition of Ritengelius, which is perfectly well known and attainable in almost any national library. We have admitted that the commentary of Sadhya Gaon can scarcely be termed Kabbalistic. We have agreed to set aside another which abounds in Kabbalistic material because its date and attribution have been challenged. In the work of R. Abraham, however, there are Zoharic elements which admit of no question, and it is indeed to the school which he represents that greats and others have referred the authorship of the Book of Splendor. There is the peculiar distinction between upper and lower Sephiroth, which is not only characteristic of the Zoharic period, but offers a connecting link between R. Abraham and the late Kabbalism of Isaac de Loria. But more than this, there is the doctrine of the unknowable God, of the cause of causes which is not apprehended by anyone outside itself, being void of all distinction and all mode of existence. It has not assumed the final shape in which it is presented by the Zohar, and it appears to be something more concealed and latent than the conception of Ein Sof, the non-ens or corona summa, which again is distinguished by R. Abraham from Kether, the crown of creation, on the ground that the accident is not made from the essence nor the res from the non-res or non-ens, thus occasioning an insoluble difficulty as to the emanation of the manifest universe. For the rest, The Ein Sof of our commentator is described in terms which are almost identical with Zoharic teaching. Neither unity nor plurality can be attributed to it because unity cannot be ascribed to that which is incomprehensible in its essence. The reason being that number is an accident belonging to the world of extension, place, and time. Among minor Zoharic correspondences, it may be noted that a peculiar importance is attributed to the letter Aleph. It is the form of all the letters, and all the paths of wisdom are contained therein, but after the universal mode. There are also traces of the peculiar angelical system which was destined to receive so much elaborate extension from the commentators on the Book of Splendor. Before dismissing this commentary, we may note the alleged connection of its author with that Abraham the Jew who belongs to the literature of alchemy. The testament of this mysterious personage transformed Nicholas Flamel from a simple scrivener into a seeker after the great work, a search, moreover, which legend represents as a success. The memorial in question was addressed to the nation of Israel, dispersed by the wrath of God in France by one who styled himself priest, prince, Levite, astrologer, and philosopher. The description which constitutes our sole knowledge concerning it is given in another testament, that of Nicholas Flamel, and it is very difficult to decide how far this can be regarded as authentic. Belonging as they do to alchemy, there is no ground here to discuss their respective claims, but it is well to say that the attempt made by Eliphas Levi to identify the Abraham of Flamel with the commentator on the Sepher Yetzirah not only institutes a connection between alchemy and Kabbalism which is unwarrantable in itself, but has no colorable evidence to cite in its own support, as there is no trace whatever of any alchemical meaning in the Hebrew commentator. Abraham the Kabbalist belongs to the 12th century. Flamel was 200 years later, and the book which he mentions could scarcely have existed in Jewry on the Levi hypothesis for such a space of time without something transpiring concerning it. As a literary and philosophical work, the first place among the dependencies of the Sepher Yetzirah seems correctly assigned to the commentary of Azariel. Its author was born at Valladolid in or about the year 1160. According to some authorities, he was a pupil of Isaac the Blind, but others say that his teacher was R. Jehuda, son of Rabad. He became in turn the instructor of R. Moses Nachmanides, who also belongs to the chain of Yetziratic tradition. He is said to have traveled much in search of secret wisdom, but it was an age when men of learning were frequently wanderers, and it was perhaps less recondite motives which actuated him. He connects with the Kabalistic system which was expounded by the school of Gerona, and there are no real grounds for supposing that he acquired knowledge elsewhere. But he added the result of his own reflections. Many works have been attributed to him, of which some are lost and some have remained in manuscript. The explanation of the 10 Sephiroth by way of questions and answers must have helped to shape the metaphysical speculations of the Kabalah and may well enough have originated more than it derived. The teachings of Azariel aroused the opposition of the Aristotelian Jews, and it is thought by Isaac Meyer that the logical form of his commentary was a concession to this school of thought. Whatever its motive, the fact broadly taken is of importance to our inquiry. It shows that the Sephirotic notion in its earliest development could not really have been that of the categories, since it had to be conformed to the principles espoused by the disciples of Aristotle. The Jewish literati followed various schools, and the influence attributed to the Stagirite has perhaps been exaggerated. The votaries of the so-called secret wisdom were a small minority. Platonism, as it is needless to say, was very little known in the West at the period in question, though it appears in the later Kabbalism. As regards both matter and form, Azariel's commentary has been the subject of high praise. It contains the doctrine of Ein Sof, which is not in the Sepher Yetzirah, and it has express views on the emanation of the Sephiroth, which are said to be contained in Ein Sof, and of no effect when separated. Their emanation was possible because it must be within the omnipotence of the deity to assume a limit. The essence and the real principle of all finite things is the thought of the Supreme Being. If that were withdrawn, they would be left as empty shells, and this is true not only of the visible world, but of the intermediaries between God and the creation. With his philosophical speculations, the Kabbalist mingles something from the fantastic region, attributing, for example, certain symbolic colors to the Sephiroth. Kether is like the concealed light, or the light which is veiled in darkness, the comparison intended being probably that of a luminous mist. Bina is sky blue, because Bina is the great sea of Kabbalism. Chokmah is yellow, chest white, and Geburah red. Tifereth is white, red, or pink. Netzach is whitish red, and Hod reddish white. Jesod is the combination of the previous triad, while Malkuth is like the light which reflects all colors. Azariel also countenances the Sephirotic division of the human body, which is found in later Kabbalism. Moses ben Nachman, or Nachmanides, was born in 1194 at Giron. Before he made acquaintance with the Kabalah, he is said to have had a prejudice against it. But he was afterwards an enthusiastic student, both of its speculative and practical parts, and both by his writings and influence contributed much to its development. His Kabbalistic explanation of the law was completed in 1268, and among his many other works that called The Garden of Delight and another on the secrets of the Torah are full of theosophical speculations. He left his native land to settle in Palestine, where he died, apparently at a great age, but at what precise time is not known. The commentary on the Sepher Yetzirah, which passes under the name of R. Eliezer, seems to have been the work of a German Jew of Germersheim, author of The Vestment of the Lord, one of the greatest Kabbalists of his period. That he was the instructor of Moses Nachmanides, as some authorities have stated, is, however, a mistake, as Basnaj has indicated, for he belongs to a later date. His works, which are wholly Kabbalistic, are 1. The Vestment of the Lord, but this has never been printed. 2. The Guide of Sinners, exhorting them to repentance and amendment of life, Venice, 1543. 3. A treatise on the soul, cited by Mirandola in his thesis against the astrologers. 4. An explanation of Psalm 145. 5. A commentary on the Sepher Yetzirah, appended to the Mantua edition of that work. The author flourished before and after the middle of the 14th century. Commentaries on the Sepher Yetzirah are ascribed to R. Aaron the Great, under the title of Book of the Points, R. Judas Levi, Sabbatai Danolo, Judah ben Barzillai, and Isaac the Blind. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.